For decades, one question has fascinated millions of Americans. How did a small immigrant community arriving with limited money, limited English, and almost no political influence end up owning the majority of hotels across the US? That answer is far bigger than a business. It is a story of immigration, family sacrifices, trust, timing, and a uniquely Gujarati way of thinking about the risks. Today, Indian Americans are estimated to own around 60% of all of the hotels in America. That translates to roughly 36,800 hotels across the country. Altogether, these businesses support more than 1 million jobs and contribute to over $370 billion into the American economy. In many ways, in small towns and highway communities, that numbers are even more remarkable. It is widely estimated that Indian families, particularly those with the surname Patel, own as many as 90% of the roadside motels. How did that happen? Well, to understand the answer, we have to go back to 70 years before. Now, the first important chapter began during the 1940s. America was emerging from the World War II, and many small hotels were struggling financially. One of the earliest Gujarati pioneers was Kanchi Manchu Desai. In 1942, he and two partners acquired a small hotel in some part of America. Later, he bought another property in San Francisco, which became much more than a hotel. It became a home for newly arriving Gujarati immigrants looking for work opportunity and the fresh start. However, the real turning point came in 1965. The United States passed an Immigration and Nationality Act, removing many immigrants' restrictions based on their nationality. And suddenly, highly skilled professionals and entrepreneurs from India had a legal pathway to America. A few years later, another major event accelerated to the moment. In 1972, Ugandan dictator Idi Amin expelled tens of thousands of Asians who were Gujratis of Indian origin, most of them by the way. Forced to leave everything behind, and many migrated to Britain, Canada, and obviously the US. Well, unlike the new migrants arriving with the dreams alone, many of these families already understood the business. Obviously, the Patel mindset. They had experience of running shops, trading businesses, and small enterprises in East Africa. When they arrived in America, they looked for opportunities that required hard work more than expensive qualifications. The muscle mass, by the way. And that opportunity was the motel business. At the time, the roadside motels were not considered glamorous investment. Many American owners wanted to sell these just because the profits were falling and maintaining the properties required constant attention. So the most investors avoided them. But Gujarati families saw a completely different angle in them. Instead of asking how much money they could take immediately, they asked one simple question: can the entire family run this business together? And the answer was yes. Parents handled the front desk, children cleaned the rooms after the school, grandparents answered the telephones, and the relatives took care of the maintenance, laundry, accounting, and things like that. So instead of hiring large staff, entire families lived inside the motel itself. Their home and their business became the same place. Now, this dramatically reduced the operating cost, while competitors had to pay wages, rent, management, expenses, while Gujarati families were reinvesting nearly every dollar back into their business. And you know what? Then came another advantage: the Gujarati business philosophy. The word simply means that business, but deeper meaning, far more powerful. Now, it is more about calculating the risk, whether the downside is limited, but the potential reward is enormous. Investor Mohnish Pabrai often summarizes this philosophy with one sentence: heads I win, tails I don't lose much. And that mindset shaped an entire generation of the hotel owners. Many Patel families purchased small, neglected motels at the very low prices, then renovated themselves, improved the customer services, lowered the room rates, and if competing motels charged somewhere around $25 a night, they charged only $19. much lower prices, and lower prices attracted more guests, higher occupancy generated steady cash flow, and those profits were then used to buy normal motels, and then another, and then one after another. Soon, one successful motel became two, two became five, and five became 10. But perhaps the most powerful secret behind the success was not the money, it was trust. Long before banks were willing to lend to immigrant entrepreneurs, Gujratis built them with their own financial networks based on the community relationships. Relatives and friends often provided handshake loans without any complex contracts and collaterals. And a family member who became successful would then help another cousin to buy a motel. So the chain never broke. And success spread through the community almost like a chain reaction. And this created something economists rarely saw at that time: an entire immigrant network growing together instead of competing against each other. And as more motels were purchased or more hotels generated, knowledge also spread quickly. Families shared business advices, accounting methods, supplier contracts, and management techniques. Every new motel owner benefited from decades of collective experience. Eventually, community became so influential that it founded the Asian American Hotel Organizations, also known as AAHOA. And today this organization represents overwhelming majority of Indian American hotel owners. Its members operate around 34,000 hotel properties worth close to $1 trillion and generate nearly $149 billion in the annual revenue. Yeah, while supporting more than 4 million American jobs, directly or maybe indirectly. Of course, this journey was never easy. During the 1970s and 1980s, many Indian motel owners became targeted of the racist attacks and hate groups such as the doorbusters. Families worked 18 hours a day, 7 days a week. Children often grew up behind the motel reception, well, the desk instead of playgrounds. Many first-generation immigrants sacrificed their comfort completely, their holidays, and even family time for the next generation that could attend the universities. Those sacrifices changed everything. Today, the children and the grandchildren of those motel first-generation owners are the doctors, lawyers, engineers, technology entrepreneurs, investment bankers, and public officials in the US. One of the most well-known examples is Patel. Yes, whose family's immigrant journey was rooted in the same motel business that transformed thousands of Gujarati families there. What started as a survival strategy for the immigrants became an economic empire in the US, and perhaps that is the biggest lesson of the extraordinary story. That success of an Indian hotel owners in America was never built on luck. It was built on family unity, restlessness, relentless hard work, and financial discipline, on the community trust for the willingness to see opportunities where others saw just the failure. Well, in many ways, the motels became much more than a business. It became the front door to the American dream. And decades later, that dream continues to welcome millions of travelers every single night, often with an Indian family standing quietly behind the reception desk, running one of the greatest immigrant success stories in the modern American history.